Hi, I'm here with DEMETRIS FESSAS, Acting General Manager of CHC. DEMETRIS, thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon, and talk us through a little bit about the presentation that you just delivered in the main hall.
Okay. It's very important for the Cyprus Hydrocarbons company to be at events like this at the Energy Institute IP Week. And you could hear a lot of the themes the last couple of days was around how the industry can work towards being more ambitious in terms of how it gets towards what people are talking about, the low carbon future. So there's lots of focus on oil and gas operations and activities and how we can fit in the narrative, if you like, around the low carbon future. That's essential for all of us. In terms of where we are at the Cyprus Hydrocarbons company and what we're doing in Cyprus, we're at the early stages of developing our gas resources. Nevertheless, we are conscious that we need to be sensitive of the EU targets and ambitions regarding climate change, and we think Cyprus has a role to play in what the EU wants to achieve. Overall, in terms of how what we call the pathways to the low carbon future, we can think of it in three pillars, if you like. One is how we deal with the energy demand. One is the input of clean energy into the energy mix, and lastly, how we can manage the conventional energy sources and make them cleaner. So in terms of energy demand, there's been lots of effort over the years around how we can be a lot more efficient with energy use. Things like the way we light and we heat and insulate our homes, we've come on leaps and bounds on how we do that. How we travel more for less, if you like. In terms of the clean energy, we've seen the input of renewables, particular solar and wind, and that's been driven by a lot of the cost reductions we've seen in the manufacturing and installation of the technologies behind there. So in terms of what we're trying to do in Cyprus to bring gas to the market, there's also the focus on how we can make these hydrocarbon resources cleaner. How we can manage that, how we can manage our emissions. We think how we can manage the emissions and also make the gas commodity more competitive. We think technology has a key part to play, and also how we price the carbon in terms of hydrocarbons, how that is going to be played out on an EU level, on a global level, is also going to play a big part. In terms of the technologies, you've probably heard mention carbon capture and storage. So that's been achieved on a small scale, and the main bet now, the initiatives are how we can scale this up such that it can be applied on bigger and bigger projects to capture as much carbon as we can, and also to have that in a cost-effective way. In terms of carbon pricing, there's broad industry support, I would say, that there needs to be some kind of mechanisms there. This can be in the form of carbon taxing or capping emissions and trading emissions. But what the industry is really wants to focus on, I would say, is how this can be applied fairly. We're not talking about competing with renewables, but we're talking around competing within emissions-emitting industries in a fair way. So there's a level playing field, so you don't get what's called carbon leakage, where you get industries moving from one region to another, or companies moving from one country to another. And to have stability in your investments, to be able to align what the governments want to do in terms of their policies, it's important to have carbon pricing enabled in a fair way.
And can you tell us a little bit about the East Mediterranean Gas Forum?
it's worth saying that the geopolitics environment in the East Mediterranean, it's a lot more complicated than, for example, in the North Sea. For Cyprus to develop its gas resources, we need export options. It's very low demand in Cyprus. To be able to have our export options, we need to have synergies and collaboration at a regional level. One example of this collaboration is the Aphrodite project that we're looking to move towards FID. To be able to develop that, the development option that we're progressing is a pipeline to Egypt, and at Egypt to utilize the liquefaction facilities that are there. So this is using regional synergies and regional collaboration. What's been done on a government level, and Cyprus has been involved in that, is the founding of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum. And this includes Egypt, it includes Greece and Italy, Cyprus I mentioned, Israel, Jordan and the Palestine Authority. And what we're looking to do with this forum is to be able to establish regional policies for developing this gas resource, to see how we can utilize collectively existing infrastructure or our thoughts for new infrastructure, and ultimately to develop a local gas hub. This was established last year, so we're at the beginning of getting it up and running, if you like. But it's an example of how in the region countries are getting together to ensure that collectively our gas resources are going to be developed to be able to compete on the global market, but to offer solutions regionally. So essentially, we're trying to avoid, if you like, this competing with each other. We're working together to make the pie bigger for everybody.
Communication is key, of course. DEMETRIS, thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon. This has been Jason Davis for KOG TV. Thank you.